Hey, how's everybody doing tonight?
Happy Saturday,
Oh,
people.
Happy Saturday, everyone.
yes, sir. We're back for another Reef Collective show, and we have our special guest Tullio from Reef Brite, and we are going to be learning all about reef lighting, aquarium lighting tonight, guys. So make sure you all have your comments ready. We'll be taking comments from all the viewers.
And as we always say, we start off the show with the same thing. It's all about Q&A, questions and answers. There's no such thing as a dumb question. Sharing is always welcome. With no bashing, there's no beating, no trolling, no, everything is all about having fun, learning, and getting to share all this knowledge. So
Exactly, and it's nice that we can all get together and enjoy talking about reefing and everything. So thanks a lot, Tullio, for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys. My pleasure. When I heard you and D wanted to do the live stream, I was looking forward to it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So maybe you want to give us a little bit of rundown about yourself and how you got into the hobby and your background.
I mean, basically, long story short, I've been working with lighting well over 20 years. D, we were discussing this off backstage, whatever you want to call it. Back in the day, we didn't have the lighting options we did today. In fact, some of the older lighting systems we had to work with were basically downright dangerous. I mean, you might as well just took an electrical cord and stuck it right in the tank,
Yeah.
So when I started getting into the hobby, I said, there's got to be a better way. There's because I knew that the light was important to the corals. And there wasn't a lot out there back then really available. I mean, so I had to start making my own stuff, and that just kept, I guess, developing and rolling over. In fact, you know what, D? I'll tell you what, talk about the Brooklyn Aquarium Society. The very first show I did was hosted by the Brooklyn Aquarium Society, and I had my little booth, whatever you want to call it, and I had this really special bulb there, and Julian Sprung comes walking.
he was there.
And he's checking it out. And he says, "Hey, man, it's looking good. Keep up the work." And it's just been a progressive thing over the years since then.
And I'm pretty sure he used those fixtures in one of the displays. Something prototype behind that started him off with the first reef project that he did in the old building. Well, he started with those huge bulbs.
I'll tell you what, and this is something that I will gladly say. Julian has actually done a lot of his own cool research, let's say, regarding lighting that many people aren't necessarily aware of. And it was actually Julian's book. Him, Delbeck, they're the Reef series they had.
Yeah.
And there was a segment in the book, and I was reading, and it was talking about how light penetrates the ocean, and the light bulb just went off. Yep. And literally from that moment on, my outlook and my perspective of light changed immediately and has never been the same.
And then all you guys moved to Florida. Julian moved to Florida. He moved to Florida. Right. And now, if you guys don't know who Julian Sprung is, Julian Sprung started a company, Two Little Fishies. Before he started Two Little Fishies, he was developing reactors. He was coming up with these crazy grow out tanks where they had captured coral and were propagating coral in these big homemade tanks. Like, I don't even know how many gallons there were, but they were all these weird tanks with tons of coral in them. Yeah. Before people had names for coral.
Very true.
Oh yeah, and in some way, shape, or form, Julian still does that today.
No, does he?
Yeah, he does. He doesn't put a lot on his tanks.
No,
you can look under his tank, and it's like another tank, and maybe has a heater in there.
I know.
He grows everything. It's amazing.
He's got his pond. D, have you ever seen the pond he has?
No, I got to get to Florida.
Yeah.
I got to get down there. I can imagine if he has any space to grow anything, he'll grow it.
Right.
So now, as far as lighting goes, how did you start developing your actual business as far as fixtures? Like, how did you start the business? At what point did you start?
Okay, I'll tell you what. This is a funny story, And it's totally true. Totally. Well, not that I would say a lie anyway, but that's what makes the story so funny. It was probably about 20 years ago, I'll say, give or take. I was invited to my very first MACNA, and this was going to be a big deal. And it was actually a gentleman by the name of Mark Weiss who flew me out there. Mark was aware of some of the stuff I was doing with lighting. And, you know, he basically said, hey, listen, this kid's got something. Let me fly him down to Florida and, you know, let's talk. You know, he set me up for MACNA. So Mark picks me up at the airport. Great. He says, where's the light? I said, Mark, don't worry about it. I got it. I had a little box with me. So we get to Mark's place and he says, let me see the light. And I'm like, Mark, I said, take me over here. I went to some custom boat shop, had them cut me a piece of PVC in half. It was like a 6-inch piece of PVC. I had them cut it in half. I lined it with a reflector. And D, remember the old VHO watertight end caps?
Yeah, those old white end caps.
I put a pair of those in there, hooked it up to a ballast. We brought it to MACNA. Everybody thought it was actually like a light fixture that somebody was selling. And this was, remember the orbit fixtures? Yeah. That's where a lot of that came from.
We can blame you for that.
And many years I tell people the joke, but literally the fixture was made out of PVC, but the finish on it was so legit that everybody thought it was, you know, manufactured, and they were trying to buy the thing. So I had some very interesting and humble beginnings.
Yeah, that is a great story. Holy smokes, I had no idea.
So, well, and like I said, Ryan, we didn't have a lot to work with back then.
Yeah, I hear. Yeah.
You know, we really didn't have a lot to work with back then.
So now that begs the question in lighting. Here's the big question. From the list, spectrum or par?
Yeah.
This is a big thing now. I'm a spectrum guy. People are par guys. Which one is more important with these lights? It's really confusing because there's so many options, especially with LEDs. You don't know whether you're getting the right spectrum. You don't know if it's losing spectrum. You don't know if it has the right par.
Yeah, there's been a lot of people asking that question.
Well, here's the problem with that. Let's start with par. When you're talking about photons, which is just a basic, it simply put, it's a packet of energy. Remember how I was saying, D and Ryan, before we open this up, that people constantly think about lighting as something that they can see. Right. It doesn't work that way with corals. It's energy. It's a transfer of energy. That's what's really going on. Corals don't have eyeballs. It's transfer of energy. So now when we're dealing with par, if you think of those photons like marbles, right? So your par meter, it's going to count those marbles. Now you got a pile of marbles.
Yep.
Here's the problem, though. The par sensor cannot determine how many green marbles you have, how many red marbles you have, or how many blue marbles you have. It just knows that you got this big pile of marbles. Now, when we go to a spectrometer, now we're talking about individual wavelengths, okay? For example, 400 of them, if you look at around 350 nanometer up through, let's say, 750 nanometers, so that's like 400 different marbles. And each one of those marbles is a slightly different hue, like a color, but a hue is like a transition between, like, you know, graduals of colors. So the point is that while par is important, you can actually have a light source that has a high par, but that's not giving you the light where you want it. It's just giving you a bunch of marbles. And then the problem with that oftentimes is when people are measuring par, they're measuring straight up.
Yeah.
Right? They're going around their tank straight up.
Yep.
Well, if you really think about it, if you think about the way your lights are orientated over your tank, in many cases, okay, the light's coming in like this way.
Yep.
Okay. So the point is that if you're measuring straight up, and let's say, depending on the beam angle of LEDs or anything else like that, there's any number of reasons why you may not necessarily get an accurate picture of the aggregate light or energy that that coral is receiving. So what I've been trying to tell people is that if you're messing around with a par meter, try to angle it. You know, like if you're at the coral, face it towards the light source.
Right.
You see what I mean? Face it towards the light source and angle the par meter towards the light source. And, you know, you could still measure straight up. But the point is no coral, well, I'm sure there's one exception somewhere, but no coral's perfectly flat. You know, unless you're dealing with like heliofunga or some of that, most of your corals are all these different shapes.
They're branching, acropora.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So most of the time when we're thinking about light, we're thinking about it in terms of straight down. But for example, a lot of people have been talking about whether it be shadowing or dead spots in their systems. And that's why, because light is not reaching those sections or those corners, because it's not all about what's happening straight down. It's what's happening in all different directions.
And now we touched upon that earlier, Mike. You, I, and Mark were talking about that. And I mentioned the fact that what if you have a bare bottom tank, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people have bare bottom tanks. Let's say your tank is white on the bottom or it's dark on the bottom. Now that light penetrates, hits the glass, and bounces back up. Now, wouldn't that affect a par reading? Or that would affect how a coral or a plant is taking up
here's
light?
the thing.
But it's good for the corals because sometimes you have that overgrowth, right? Lights, you know, aren't getting underneath those corals at the SPS, and you have die-off. Maybe it's better that it reflects up into the coral, maybe, right?
Well, and the thing is that it wouldn't necessarily affect the par reading, because remember something, if your par meter is this way or this way, that reflected light is going this way. So the par meter is essentially not even going to see it. But it you know, D, listen, you're old school. We're both old school. Look at me. You could tell how old school I am, right?
I used to look like that.
So what I'm saying is that's why even back in the day, we used to use white substrates, because it would actually reflect the light.
Oh, that's true.
That's why if you ever see a tank with a black background and black sand, the tank almost looks dim because there's nothing for the light to reflect against.
Oh, it's absorbing it.
Exactly.
Remember crushed coral?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So you know, bare bottom tanks and it's black, it's almost could be.
Well, no. Here's the thing: not necessarily, because the thing is again, if you have your light, the way your light is planned out, as long as you're getting good coverage coming down, okay, it's not the end of the world, bare bottom, or if you're running a substrate or something like that. The first thing to start thinking about corals differently is that, one, light is not something you see, okay? It's energy for the coral.
Yes.
And then start thinking of your coral like an antenna, you know, like a regular antenna. It's trying to receive that energy. It needs that energy. So the more surface area, the greater the surface area you can cover with light, the better you're going to be. And you can actually tell this in some cases by the shapes of corals.
Yes.
Meaning that if a coral's been in the system for a while, take like a favia, right? You take a favia, you put it in the substrate, for example. If that favia has been in a system with good lighting and been in there for a while, it'll grow like a dome.
Yes.
It'll be like circular and almost like a dome. Why? Because it's receiving light from all angles. So therefore, it's going to grow evenly.
Yes. Yeah, true.
So there's a lot, you know, I guess the biggest thing I try to stress to people is don't get caught up with par, because you know what? Okay, D, I'm sure you go to an aquarium store or two, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you see their coral systems, right?
Yeah.
I guarantee you, if you put a par meter in any one of those systems,
low,
won't be anywhere near what people are saying you have to have.
That's my argument. I've been constantly arguing that, only because I know Ryan's a professional in the field. I was a professional in the field. I didn't know what a par meter was until we were doing electrical work, and one of my guys actually built a tank, and he was like, "Oh, D, what's your par in your tank?" And I says, "I have no idea," but
Right.
he had never had a tank before, and this had to be like in 90 something, like in 97 or 98, and we were like, "Well, what is par?" Because par isn't on any of the labels for the light bulbs. It's always 6500K. We used to use, what were those, 20,000K bulbs, 18. Do they even have 20,000K bulbs?
Well,
I don't even know what a 20,000K would be in an LED.
well, see, now, D, you're trying to trap me out there because you know my feelings about
Because
20K.
I know you.
You know my feelings about 20K. We'll get to that in a minute. But back to the par, since you brought it up. Interestingly enough, basically about 1971, par was created as a better way to measure the energy from the sun for horticulture use. Okay?
Yep.
Because the current standard they were using was foot candles. Okay,
Yeah.
so that shows you how archaic that was. So they devised par. Now, interestingly enough, Joy, who you know, Ryan and Dee, and you guys all know, Joy was actually one of the people way back in the day, because she had Harbor Aquatics and all of this other stuff. She got her hands on one of these par meters, and she started going to town. And that kind of picked up, and I still tease her about that till this day. I break her chops about par, but let's put it in a different perspective. We got two pieces of coral here. This coral right here, I got a lot of par, but the par is coming straight down. Think of it straight down. So this is actually shadowed. You see what I'm trying to say? Because you see what I mean about that coral? It creates its own stops because the light can't pass through it. Yeah. So I got a slightly higher par here. Now this coral, less par, but I'm getting light to more surface area.
Yes, makes sense.
Which coral you think is going to do better? The one with the more even energy distributed around the greatest area or surface area, because now that coral can efficiently utilize that energy.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay.
I thought it was breaking for a minute there.
We broke the stream.
All those questions. I'm going through all the questions and comments here at the same time.
People ask questions here for sure. You know, we can take some questions if you want to take a couple.
It's up to you guys. You know me.
Yep. Here, let me pick one up here. Well, here's one from Cindy. Question for Tullio. How do you stay interested in the hobby for so long? So many of us get burnt out or just give up. What's your advice to avoid this?
Well, he wasn't streaming back then.
First of all, Cindy, how you doing? You know, I'll tell you, the best advice I could say is to keep changing it up. Keep challenging yourself. You know, even like, for example, I know this sounds funny coming from a light guy, but non-photosynthetic aquariums can be awesome.
Yeah.
If you see some of the non-photosynthetic corals out there, those things are ridiculous. And you want to talk about difficulty level or care level of those things, you know, that's a challenge. There's so many different areas. And so me, I'm fortunate because I get to work with public aquariums, facilities like Disney and Animal Kingdom and Epcot Center. And I get to work with so many different animals, from sea turtles. Heck, the other day, Ryan, I don't know if you've seen that post, but I was talking to Metro Cat about octopus Inky and explaining how octopus can be very sensitive to light and that it can affect their behavior. Right. And then he said, yeah, I turned off the red light at night, and now Inky is all kinds of happy and he's all kind of active. So I guess by changing it up, constantly challenging yourself and working with different things, that's how I try to keep, you know, the passion and the interest going. And of course, the people. It's the people that make it. You guys, Ryan, Dee, you know, you guys make it fun.
Well, exactly.
Hey, Tullio, How many sea fans have you killed over the years? Remember, we kept trying to grow those sea fans.
I tell you what, I've been really fortunate with them. I've been really fortunate with them, and the key with sea fans, is again, it's the tank setup. It's the tank setup. There's all these organisms. It's like I said, so again, when we talk about PAR or we talk about spectrum.
Yes.
Now, D, you've done many different tanks. Ryan, you've done many different tanks. Corals respond to light differently.
Yes.
Depending on species, there's so many things going on. And with many people's systems, I call it like the fruit stand effect, where you're trying to keep all these different things happy, but yet in many ways, they all have their own kind of unique requirements.
Exactly. Like some chalices like to be, not as bright of light. You know what I mean? Under edges, just getting a little bit of light. And if they're happy, they'll creep out on their own. You know what I mean? And grow in those patterns.
Well, and what's really cool is that even the color of a coral can tell you a lot.
Yes.
Okay? I'll use a red mushroom, for example, because it's just the easiest to create an analogy this way.
Yep.
If you have a red mushroom, what that tells you is that basically it's absorbing more blue and green light and reflecting a lot of the red, because that's what you're seeing is the red.
Right.
Now, if you see a blue coral, okay, it's reflecting blue but absorbing red and green. Now, this isn't all directly attributable to absorption. Sometimes they're protective pigments. You see what I'm trying to say? But the colors in corals, they're kind of there for a reason. And now, with a lot of these more ridiculously colored corals, and I mean that in a cool way, I mean in a good way, you can't treat those corals the same, D, as we did in the old days. Because if you took that SPS and you put it in one of them older systems under that type of intensity and what have you, it's going to turn brown.
Yeah, as we learned, as we found out the hard way.
It's almost like you're going through withdrawal, tossing it in another tank.
It's going to turn brown. So ironically enough, we're constantly talking about PAR and PAR levels. Yeah. A lot of the systems that I know, successful systems, you'd be shocked if you knew what their PAR levels actually were, and how much lower they typically are than maybe what might be thought.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like a hobby. Everybody's chasing those numbers, right? It goes with anything. Testing your water, your lighting numbers. People just get obsessed with it sometimes. Sometimes maybe it's just let it do its thing.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll give you a little tidbit or a little secret. Remember how we were saying how that coral is an antenna, right?
Yep.
That coral, first job, number one, the first thing it does when it wakes up in the morning, okay, is I got to survive. That's its first priority, is survival. Any type of growth or reproduction requires more energy. So the first thing it has to do is meet its basic energy requirements. No different than Ryan. I know you work out a little bit. Yeah. You probably have to have 3,000 calories a day.
Oh yeah.
More. But that's your basic energy requirement. A coral is no different. So here's what happens. If you can do it correctly and you can distribute that energy evenly, okay, at lower intensities, and this is something that you do gradually, of course, you don't just do it overnight. But at lower intensities, what that coral starts saying is, hey, I've got to adjust. I've got to adapt. I'm going to develop different pigments and colors because I need to absorb all the energy that I can.
Yeah, exactly. They are involved.
Exactly. And that's where I personally believe a lot of these ridiculous colors are coming. Yeah. Because the coral's responding and saying, hey, I got to develop these pigments to absorb the light. Because remember something, the moment you can see it, meaning a color on a coral, that means light is interacting with it.
Well, exactly. And we're giving, our tanks to lighting. We're feeding those corals. We're giving them a much more successful, rate for living and growth wise. So they don't have to expel so much energy, right? The food is there, the light is there. It definitely.
Yeah. So the thing is that even if you don't have the exact intensity, for example, it's more important, like Dee was saying, in terms of spectrum, the right type of light, and the proper distribution of that energy so that the corals are receiving it.
Exactly. Perfect. So let's take another question here. So we got Insane Reefer, Farm Boy. Please ask Tullio, when running Reef Brites, do you still have to start slow as far as overall intensity, or can you start at 100%?
How you doing? No, you can absolutely fire them up at 100%.
Yep.
I mean, the Reef Brites. Ryan will talk your tank briefly because you've used them.
I even had you jump in my apex and help. Seriously, I got him one night where I'm like, Tullio, can you hop on and help me? He was a gentleman. I gave him all the information. He hopped on my apex. I plugged it in. He went through.
That's the kind of guy he is, man.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
But the thing is that optically, and I designed them this way. Optically, the Reef Brites behave differently, so you don't have to worry about that intensity in terms of burning your corals or anything else like that. So you can absolutely fire them up at 100%.
Yeah, very true. Like mine, we ramped it up throughout. We started low and ramped it up throughout the day on mine.
Right.
So now, would you consider them supplemental light, or can they be run as main lighting pieces?
Well, it's interesting that you said that, Dee. There are actually quite a few people, and I mean legit tanks, that are running exclusively Reef Brite XHOs. And I mean SPS. There's a guy in the UK, Aquarium Connections, beautiful tanks. If you ever get a chance to look them up, and you'll see on many of the tanks, you'll see the XHO rack up there, and that's the only lighting they got. And these SPS, they're doing banging. I was actually even fortunate enough to send Jamie Craig some light. They do that coral spawning program. And they've been using Reef Brites with some of that stuff. So no, you can absolutely use the Reef Brite standalone. But the thing that I like about them, because Dee, listen, I've done talks at your club, and you know me. With me, it's about the lighting. So I get that for this reason, this person might like to run the Kessel, or for this reason, this person might want to run a Radion.
Yeah.
So my focus was that, why don't I make something to make these types of systems better? Yes, you can run just the XHOs, but what's really awesome about the XHOs is you can use them to complement whatever lighting you got.
Exactly. Yeah, I love mine. Like when I take pictures or videos, I just turn off my AI 52s and it's just the Reef Brites. And at night, I just run my Reef Brites because there's something about your blue in your lighting that really makes the corals pop differently compared to running my AI 52s on there. And it's pretty awesome. So I always take my pictures under your lighting, videos under your lighting. And they look really cool too. They look really cool.
Well, the thing that stinks, and
it has some cool factor to it for sure.
Put it to this way, you guys, your stuff when it comes to video, your stuff when it comes to taking pictures of things. Yeah. And I know that I could state with 1,000% certainty that no matter how you try to set your camera or video that tank, you cannot capture what it actually looks like.
No, we fight with those blues.
It's frustrated me for years. It's kind of one of those things you just got to see.
Yeah, exactly. And the funny thing is now with technology and like cell phones and cameras being so intense, I feel the chase to actually see what a coral looks like with your eye is really kind of miscombobulated, because often I take my daughter with me. We'll go shop for corals. We'll go to the shows. We'll walk around the show. And I'll look at that coral and she'll say, okay, Dad, don't buy anything green. Okay. And we'll look at it. But then when you come home and put it under your tank lights, it looks completely different. And then you're changing things, trying to see what that actual coral color is, because you really don't know what it is.
Well, and each system is going to have its own variables, different elements, different trace elements, things like that. And just everything, everything from the type of salt you might be running to whether you're doing a 2-part or a 3-part or a Triton system or this, depending on the elements, even iodine, things like that, availability. And sometimes, D, how many times have you taken that coral, put it in your tank, and it turned into something awesome that was completely different than when it started?
Oh, good deal. Got some good deals like that.
Right.
Luck. Once in a while, you luck out.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, my screen went black there for a minute. I'm back. Jeez, I'm telling you. So let's take another one here. So we got mass aquariums. What are some of the corals that are responsible only to lighting and not to feeding regular feedings?
I couldn't answer. I frankly, I could not accurately answer that question because I am not a coral biologist. Okay. But most corals, I will say this, most corals feed in some type of way. The difference is going to be particulate size.
Yes.
What they'll accept, what they'll reject, things like that. Obviously polyp size, things like that. But I think it would be fair to assume that more corals feed, use light in conjunction with feeding and other things, as opposed to just strictly photosynthetic.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Any of the coral stuff, I'll be the first to defer to Dana Riddle. Dana does awesome work. My thing is photonics. It's how that photon interacts with matter, in this case, a coral. But when it comes to specific corals or things like that, Dana's work is awesome, and I always enjoy his stuff.
Yep.
So I'll hit you with what I think is a hard question. I try to throw a curveball at him.
Curveball time.
Here it comes. What is the life expectancy of these LEDs? Because unlike T5s, T8s, compacts, and everything else, you knew when the light was losing intensity. Now, we're paying a lot of money for some of these fixtures on the market, anywhere, not to throw any name. It doesn't matter what the name is. Some of them are $800, some are $1,200, but nothing lasts forever. So there was a time early in the fixture making process when people used to advertise, oh, my fixture uses this diode or this diode. Like there used to be a company called Build My LED, and you could actually choose which type of LED diodes you could put in a fixture. But now when we buy one of these lights that are on the market now, how do we know how long that fixture is actually good for, or does it die?
Well, here's the thing. First of all, I'd like to give a shout out to Doug. Glad the halides are working out for you. I was glad to help him out.
I like halides.
But anyway, when it comes to LEDs, and I tell this to people all the time, they do not last forever, period. And depending on the number of hours you're running them a day, depending on what intensities you're running them at, there's a lot of factors that will affect their life expectancy. What I try to explain to people whenever setting up a system, you have to look at it at approximately about a 5-year plan. And what I mean by that is your average quality LED system, it's reasonable to expect 4 to 5 years of performance out of that device. It's going to degrade. But 4 to 5 years performance out of that device. But now here's what you have to do, though.
Yeah.
Divide up the cost of ownership. So now, D, let's take a 4-foot tank. Back in the day, we might have ran a 6-lamp T5 or a 2-lamp T5.
I got one in the garage, 6-lamp T5 to change those bulbs.
That meant that every year, we had to spend 8 times 30, which is $240 to replace them bulbs.
Not counting the ballast. Not counting if the ballast you had to change.
So if you took that 240, now you multiply it by 5, we're at 1,200 right there.
Okay. I'll
So
buy
even
that.
if you're running two radions or whatever, see, remember that energy we keep talking about? That energy requires work,
Yeah.
okay? And that work costs money. Meaning, I don't know if any guys in the audience are into like car audio, but they can tell you that it costs X amount per watt when it comes to car audio in terms of cost of ownership. Well, lighting is really no different. It's more like a pay me now, pay me later kind of thing. They all work. The T5s work, the LEDs work, all of this stuff works. But interestingly enough, at the end of the day, the cost of ownership, because of the proper amount of work required to provide the proper amount of energy to a given system, that cost of ownership is going to work out to be the same over time.
Yeah, I was fighting replacing those ballasts. I mean,
Yeah.
I had 2 4-bulb units over my 125. That's 8 bulbs, and each time a ballast went out, that was $50 plus taking it apart. Then when you take it apart, you got to realize you got to change a bulb. That's another $20, $30.
Yeah.
And we had the heat in the summer. The heat was a problem in New York. It would be easy for that tank to hit 85, easy, if not more.
Because when I had my tank, I was running 250 watt, 2 metal halides in my tank. Up here in Canada, it was great. The heat coming off that was heating up the room.
Oh yeah, and you know the important thing, like with lighting or pumps or any of this stuff, is that
efficiency.
The price of corals aren't cheap these days.
No, not at all.
The price of some of these pieces and some of these frags and some of these anemones. So it's very easy for somebody to have thousands and thousands of dollars
easy
in livestock in their tank. Now you have the obvious responsibility to the well-being of the livestock, but you also have the financial commitment, if you will, because you have thousands and thousands of dollars in this stuff. Exactly. And I get that everybody, tries to be budget conscious or that whole reefing on a budget thing. And I tell people all the time, hey, work with what works for you. There's nothing wrong with that. But there does get to a point where it's like, yo, I've got $5,000, $10,000 in corals in my system. Is it really worth it to save that $50 or to save that $100 and take a chance buying this product or buying that product? I don't know. That's something that I ask myself that question all the time.
Well, exactly. Yeah, it's like when you first get in the hobby, you buy a little bit of the lower end stuff, and you think, oh, it's great, and then it breaks down on you. And I'm like, man, if I would have just bought a little bit of the higher end, you get that warranty with it, you get that customer service. Some of those pumps you just buy from China. There's no service. You're not going to get a return on it.
You throw it in the garbage.
Well, exactly. Like you're saying, we spend thousands of dollars on all these corals and fish. They're animals. We got to respect them. We got to keep them alive and try to do the best we can. You know what I mean? And we've all been there. Like because I'm an electrician myself and I like to tinker around with electronics. When I first got into it, I'm like, oh man, I'm going to save some money. I'm going to buy some Cree LEDs. I'm going to buy some drivers.
Cree. That was the name, Cree. I was trying to think of it all morning. Cree.
Some heat sink. I soldered everything together. I got it in there. But then after, I'm like, a couple of lights are going out. I'm like, oh man, look, salt creep got onto it. It ate through, knocked off a couple of the wires. I'm like, man, I wish I would have just went a little bit higher end, got some nice LEDs in there. That money that I spent for all this stuff, I could have just got a nice light and less stressful. Because now,
didn't you build your first light, Ryan?
Yeah,
the first one you tried to build it, right?
Yeah,
I remember.
It worked. Everything was great, but the heat sink, everything was good, but it was just getting a little too hot. Some of the solder was letting go. You live and learn. That's all I have to say.
What you find, and again, back to that cost of ownership. So listen, I totally support DIY stuff.
Well, I love DIY.
In fact, half the stuff, listen, if you want to be real, half the products in this industry today started because 20, 30 years ago, somebody DIY'd something and they kept developing it and working it and developing it and working it, and it turned out to be a product. Okay, so everything is DIY at one point or another. So I'm totally supportive of that. But Ryan, as you learned, and again, I guarantee you, if you add up all the money you spent buying those individual parts, components, and everything you needed to assemble that system.
Time to do it.
You were close to just buying something off the shelf. And here's the other thing that I try to at least let the DIY guys know. If you're going to DIY something, great. But know this, the moment you take that board and solder it into your system, you own it.
Yep.
There's no returns.
Exactly.
You see, even to build my LED or whatever they were, they'll be the first to tell you, here you go, here's the parts. You open it, you own it. There ain't no return in nothing. So you could actually spend $300-400, let's say, building something. And like you said, Ryan, the salt started getting in there and all this other stuff started getting in there.
Exactly. There's your corals. You got no lights. You got to find a replacement. You got to buy something. And or you're back in there soldering it again, trying to get it working. You're working on your tank more than enjoying it.
Yeah, but I mean, the DIY stuff is cool. It's just saltwater tanks are pretty harsh environments.
Exactly. Especially with
harsh environments.
That's a good point, because when I took usually my daughter and I always go to the shows. I took my wife to the shows. Now I got multiple tanks in the house. We got coral. They really, it goes over your head when you say, oh, I'm fragging, I'm cutting, this is that, this and that. When she saw how much one coral cost, all of a sudden, all of the work that you put into it makes sense, because, oh, if this grows, this coral started out $100, $200, $300. Now it's 4 corals worth $300-400, 5 coral. Your whole when Hurricane Sandy came and hit us, the insurance guy came to the house. He's looking at the roof. He's looking at this. I said, no, you got to come and look at this tank, because if this tank goes, like, this is thousands of dollars worth of life in here. Thousands.
Now, D, when you do your when you do your SPS frags, have you ever experimented gluing them on the side?
Yes. And some of them grow from both sides. And that's how
branches. Yep.
That's how I grew my first, what was it? The Pasillipora.
Yeah.
It actually happened by accident because it fell over. It fell, and it would not stand up. So I said, the hell with it. I already got glue on the side. I left it on the side, and it was basically like this, like my hand. The branch was standing out, and it grew up from each one of these pieces.
Yeah.
I ended up with 5 pieces. And that was the first time I got it to live. I could never get that coral to live.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this is onto something. Then I made a video like, look, how to use this glue, how to glue the right way.
Right.
Yeah, and the coral laying on its side like that has more surface area as well for the lighting to hit it.
Exactly.
And it heals, because you realize from each end it heals, from the side is living tissue. So you end up with like a plant. It's like trimming a plant.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Then my fish knocked it over and covered it with sand.
We got another question here from Produce Reef. I heard that you can run Reef Brites as a substitute for T5s.
Actually, you can. And I'll put it to you this way. So when LEDs came out, they came out to replace T5s, metal halides, all these different light sources, right? What people started discovering when they started employing T5s again was that, okay, we talked about those shadows and those dark spots, D, right? So every lighting system, I don't care what manufacturer it is, it has a characteristic pattern. So what happens is you put that on the tank, and the human eye cannot see it, but there's a characteristic optical pattern. So when people started using T5s, what it really was, in using the T5s, what was happening was more energy was getting distributed to different areas of the corals, reaching more surface area. So people were starting to see that response. Okay, people were starting to see that response. Then what happens is, with the Reef Brites, because they're right in that band of critical energy, that's distributed throughout the field of the tank. So again, Ryan, I'll use your tank for example. Yep. when your AI lights are off and just your Reef Brites are on,
Yep.
that entire tank is washed with light.
Oh, it's completely washed with light. That's like when we designed it, that perfectly down the middle, there was enough area to light the whole tank. Like right now, pretty much the Reef Brites are right on my tank right now, and the tank is just glowing.
Well, and here's the thing. I'm not saying that you can't successfully use T5s.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that you can use Reef Brites as an option because not everybody can run these big hybrid T5 setups. You know, there's a lot of different reasons why you want the benefits of T5, but it may not work out for you. And that's where the Reef Brites make a good substitute.
Yeah, I just got away from, well, actually, I just liked the T5s for a long time only because I felt that most of the LEDs shine straight down like a laser. And if you have a long tank, you need so many of those fixtures that it becomes really expensive. And then the wiring involved with putting multiple fixtures on a tank, it becomes kind of a crazy project. How to fit all of that over the tank and under a hood. If you got an open top, it's a little easier.
But with his Reef Brites, like these, I can turn them, right? They are adjustable.
That's awesome.
Exactly.
And it's not, guys, it's not just about the Reef Brites, because I don't want it to turn into like an infomercial, but optically they are different. They are different. So the thing is D, like with a Reef Brite, we sell them up to 72 inches long.
That's what I'm looking for.
You're not going to buy a 6 foot long T5 lamp. Somebody might have a little tank and they can't put that big T5 on there. We have the smaller XHOs. Actually, technically, we make the XHOs up to 8 feet long. It's just on the 8 foot units. The shipping is so ungodly. I often tell people, unless it really has to be 8 feet, just buy 2 4-footers and cover the same length.
Yeah, because the mailman's going to bend it.
Exactly.
The odds of that getting bent, or forget about it.
The mailman, you're right. The mailman's going to bend it. So, I mean, the other thing with T5 is that, because obviously I've done my fair share of work with T5 lamps and T5 systems. The thing that I don't like about T5 personally is that, like, if you have a tank lit up with just T5s, the tank is like flat. I can't explain it, but there's just, I mean, it's just like you turned on a light switch, the whole thing lit up. But I can't put words on it, but the tank is just like flat.
I totally get what you're saying there. It just has that one, just
no shimmer. No shimmer.
Exactly.
Well, what it is, because again, the way the T5s produce light, it cancels that shimmer out. In fact, interestingly enough, when BRS did those videos on the XHOs, they showed that if you use multiple XHOs, it will also cancel out that shimmer because they behave so much like T5s. So they are definitely a good alternative for somebody that can't use T5s for whatever reason.
Yep. So we had another here, Candles Reef. Is there an XHO universal mounting kit? I'd like to add some to my Zet light. It really
depends. It really depends on the dimension of your Zet light. I can tell you that within the next few weeks, I did promise you, Ryan, we'd have a little surprise anyway. We have a different bracket system coming out. Some people might be familiar. Well, Ryan, you use the K series. You've seen those systems. Well, I have a new bracket system coming out literally within the next few weeks that are way more universal, and you will be able to use it with other lights, including the Kessels and what have you. So we're pretty excited about that.
That's awesome.
I like the fact that his lights have that swivel, like the mount, so you can actually point them in the front of the tank and aim them back towards the back. Like you can change the the angle that it's hitting down.
And that is critical. That is critical. But the swivel also depends on the location of the light. Okay. See, when the Reef Brites are spread really far out, which is how a lot of people will run them, because they have them on the opposite end of their T5 or whatever lighting system they're running. The XHOs have to be pointed in, so they're doing this.
Yeah.
When they're able to be near or at the light source, then actually pointing down works really, really well for them.
Well, look at my tank. My tank's 4 feet wide, and I only have your lighting going down the middle of the tank.
Right.
Look, when we designed it.
And you're getting that spread, right?
Spread. All the corals are living. Everybody's happy.
Exactly. So to the gentleman's answer, yes, within a few weeks, there will be a universal bracket out that should work with your light.
There you go, Anthony. You got the question first, buddy.
Okay. I need 6 foot XHOs. I got to get some newer. Like you say, though, these lights have been running on that tank for about 6 years now, about 5-6 years now. And you can start seeing a slight change, because the corals, when you first put a light on, will grow towards a light like a plant. They'll come up or out, or you'll start getting a different type of algae, which I notice in the basement tanks. It'll go from coralline to like a thick green, not the hair algae, but it'll change.
Right. Oh yeah. And any, listen, any lighting system, after about 5-6 years, they're going to start degrading. It's physics. It's like the engine in your car. The more you use it, it's going to wear out. Things just wear out. They don't last forever. So when you're buying an LED system, I normally tell people to prepare to service or replace said system, let's say every 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay, every 5 years, because things do degrade over time.
There you go. I see. He says he's very happy to hear this.
It's funny. Now, what about heat sinks in the strip lights? Because you usually don't see what you think is a heat sink, but when heat dissipation is always an issue in any light unit, depending on the unit.
Well, here's the interesting thing. You know what? And D, I can say this because you've known me for many years, and the Brooklyn Aquarium Society's known me again since I've been doing this from the beginning. And one of the interesting things about any light that you ever see that come from me or that I've designed, it doesn't have any heat sinks per se.
Yeah, exactly.
The reason for that is because it's actually the entire housing. That's the heat sink.
Yeah,
that's why I always work with aluminum.
Yep.
Every one of our fixtures, whether it's a Lumilite, an XHO, my halides, the T5s, they're all made out of aluminum, because aluminum just deals with heat so well, transferring heat and things like that.
So now BeavsReef says, so when they wear out, you get algae, and that's not necessarily the point. But a lot of times what I've noticed, and I'm not a pro, but what I've noticed is people will fight to grow coralline algae. I don't know what the love affair is with coralline algae, but people will fight to grow coralline algae. And there are many factors in growing anything. It could be calcium, it could be light, it could be phosphates. You could be short of any of those things. But when you know your tank, and when you're running a tank for a long time, not for 3 months, not for 4 months, a year, when you're running your tank for a year, you notice a change. You see things change, and you start taking it apart. Okay, you test this, you test that, you test the other thing, and you kind of break it down systematically.
And D, it's really good you brought that up, and I'll tell you why. I'll take myself. I don't have a tank set up right now. But when I did, whenever I did anything, I did it one thing at a time. And the reason why I did that is because whatever the result was, good or bad, I could trace it back to the last thing I did. Sure. And at least have a good starting point. But see, now if I change 3 things at once,
then what do you do?
And something good happens or something bad happens, then do I really know what I did? No, because I did 3 different things, and any one of those could have either been the cause for the benefit or the cause for the problem.
Yeah.
By doing one thing at a time, I can always go back to that point and redo or undo that and see if there's any change.
Yeah.
And with reef tanks, because it's so dynamic, try not to change too much at once. Do one thing at a time so that you can compare it to your results. You can compare. And lighting is included. Lighting is included. I've been on the phone with people and they call me up and they're like, hey, listen, I want to run your lights. And I'm like, well, how are your corals doing? And they're like, oh, the corals are doing great. I said, well, what the hell do you need my lights for? So I'll tell you what, when you have a problem with your tank, then give me a call, because now you have to change the lights. Don't change something just to change it unless you know that it's like a step up or you're doing something better for your system.
Yeah, and this tank behind me, I took your advice. I've been running 2 strips, 2 LED fixtures over for the past couple of months, and I have cryptocorn. I have some hard to respawn plants way at the bottom. The tank is almost 35 inches tall, so hitting from the top to the bottom is kind of, you lose a little bit of color. And I noticed that the LEDs I was running with different spectrum colors. So I said, let me try like the old days and put a 6500 focus, all that one spectrum. And as you can see, it is like completely washes into the room. The difference is like staggering.
Yeah.
people say, do you have the sun behind you? But I didn't do anything but change the spectrum. Everything is on one spectrum instead of, I think, 4 spectrums.
Well, and here's the thing, and what you're talking about, see, Kelvin and spectrum are actually 2 different things.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't necessarily associate it that way, but they're 2 different things, meaning Kelvin is more, let's say, how things are rendered to the human eye. Kelvin is more based on human eye response, meaning it's basically you take a piece of metal, you heat it up to a given temperature, whatever the metal starts to glow, right? Whatever that metal glows to, if it's orange, let's say, and the metal's at 2000 degrees, well, that's 2000 Kelvin. See, spectrum gets back to where, in fact, I showed you guys when I broke out the spectrometer for the talk, and we started picking out light bulbs and all this other stuff. And the problem with spectrum is, with spectrum, you have, let's say, if I took 400 nanometers from 350 to 750, right in that band, just beyond visible light, that's 400 individual things happening simultaneously, like an equalizer on your car. There's no way to describe all of that information and data within 1 or 2 words or sentences. So when people say color spectrum, that's like one of those slang terms that got picked up along the way. But color and spectrum are actually 2 different things, because even within the spectrum, you have all these different bands of colors. You see what I mean? So, but you did good with the 65K, because right in that 5,000, 5,500 to 6,500, you're closely replicating sunlight.
Yeah, I feel it. The whole room. I've actually had to cut down. I don't need any more lights in the room, but it's the same power, but just that little change. So I can imagine what I was running before was either way underpowered or, just the wrong thing. So since I changed that one thing, if I get some crazy growth or a die, I can attribute it to that one thing.
Yep.
Right. Oh yeah, definitely.
Exactly. It's like myself. I'm watching my SPS. They're growing. I keep raising the light intensity a little bit every 2 weeks, and I can see a little bit more potential as I'm going. But I don't mess with it just too much, just in case.
Well, you're also dosing kalkwasser.
Oh yeah,
kalkwasser is the concentrated form of calcium that you don't get in the 2-part. I've screwed up with that a lot. I've been playing with kalkwasser for years.
I'm loving it. Like, I'm taking it slow, watching my numbers. I'm using the dosing pump, the dosatronic, using that as well. So I have it under control. But man, Sorry, Ed?
No, I was going to say you were talking about like increasing the intensity and things. You know, what a lot of people don't realize, and oftentimes when I have the opportunity to talk about people about their system,
yes.
I say, well, what's your real goal? Because what a lot of people don't realize is growth and color don't necessarily go hand in hand.
True.
Because what makes a coral grow really fast may or may not necessarily make it color up.
True.
The way you want it to. You see what I mean? There's kind of different sciences. There's different sciences, if you will, in the way you would approach that lighting system, depending on whether you're trying to elicit colors or you're trying to elicit growth. Now,
it's like running blues is supposed to brighten up your colors. You run your whites is supposed to help them grow faster, right?
Well, to an extent, yes. To an extent, yes.
Blues, but they color up nicer.
Yeah. To an extent, yes. But the thing is that again, different corals grow at different rates. Okay, different corals grow at different rates, and sometimes, and Dee, I know you've been in there in the past, and Ryan, I'm sure you've been there in the past too. It's great to say, yo, I want my corals to grow until they really do start growing, and they approach each other, and then you get stuff killing each other. So make sure you plan out your tank very well, because many of these corals can get very big.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, I did that.
Around the tank, I give them a lot of area so they can grow into these, nice size colonies and still get that light. This is my plan, the way I planned out mine.
And sometimes, like anything else, it can actually be healthy to trim corals.
Yep, true.
Well, that's the problem with soft coral.
Yeah,
soft coral will grow so much faster that it becomes like toxic warfare in the tank. But we're trying to grow them fast, but then it hurts us because we're growing them fast.
Yep, exactly.
Oh yeah, and I guess there's an old expression, slow wins the race. It's like the turtle and the hare kind of thing. Yeah. And I guess with all the years that I've been doing it, I've become more like the turtle.
Yeah.
I mean, I can ramp up that growth, but do I really want to push that system to a certain point or edge where if anything changes or falters, now I got a problem.
True.
I'd rather go a little bit slower, and then listen, any system is going to change over time. I don't care how automated you have it. I don't care what controller you're running, what reactors you're running. Excuse my language, but shit happens. So you want to have that.
You ain't lying.
It's like you're talking with the kalkwaster. It can tank. Everything can go wrong if you don't watch it.
Right. So slow wins the race. So, listen, it's human nature that we always want to make things faster.
Yep.
We want to make them better. But I don't know about you guys, but whenever I've tried to make something better, I'm kind of like Tim Allen. It doesn't always work out that way.
True.
It's fun to do it until it happens. What they say, be careful what you wish for.
The thing too, like when you're growing at your skeletons of your coral as well, if you're growing too fast, it might be a little bit more brittle. But if you're growing at a slower rate, the skeleton, you know what I mean, might be a stronger base for them to start out as they branch, so they have a strong base.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So slow wins the race,
especially in this hobby.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing though. Since I put that kalkwaster on there, I've been keeping my pH in check.
It's growing, right?
Like my coral algae is going crazy. It's really taken off nicely. And
it's great.
I'll tell you what though, Ryan. Aquaculture can be fantastic.
Yeah.
But just have your safeties in place.
Look, do we sound alike or what?
It is very easy, even with the best intentions, to wipe out an entire tank if you put too much kalkwasser in that system.
Tullio, I think we sound alike because I've been saying that to him for like how long I've been saying that? We've done it. I have done it. He's done it. We've done it'd be great. In just one day, I told him my alkalinity hit like 20 one day, and I was like, "Holy crap!" I forgot it had drip kalkwasser, and I was doing 2-part.
Yeah,
and I was like, "Oh man!"
So I'm running my kalkwasser and my calcium reactor at the same time. My calcium reactor, I have to turn down so much. I just have enough flow going through there, pulling my magnesium. but really everything right now is concentrated on the kalkwasser. So as soon as the kalkwasser can't keep up anymore, I can slowly turn my calcium reactor up on it. But I got it dialed in with my dosatronic. I watch my tank pretty religiously every day. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I guess.
Oh yeah.
There's no, I'm not talking about my tank or doing something.
What I used to do, Ryan, listen, I'll tell you, I like kalkwasser myself.
I do.
What I used to do is I'd make up my kalkwasser solution.
Yeah.
And my ATO, my automatic top off.
Yeah.
That would be the kalkwasser enriched water. So this way I didn't have to worry about a kalkwasser reactor going wild on me and just dumping it into the system. I knew that it was just going in with the topped off water, and based on the volume of the system, it wouldn't be, as bad, let's say, if that whole thing cut loose.
Oh, exactly. See, I was thinking about doing that, but man, my tank evaporates so much water a day. I was really worried about too much. So that's why with the dosatronic, I have it hooked up. It runs down to my basement. It's in a 50 gallon barrel of fresh water. And this way I tell my tank, 500 milliliters, 4 or 5 times a day. This way I can track it. And then I watch my pH and I'm watching my alkalinity to keep it in check, that it doesn't just go crazy up to, like Dee said,
right,
20 or whatever it was.
Isn't technology awesome?
Yeah, exactly. And then I have my alkatronic. My alkatronic, we're graphing it through the day, and I can see spikes or if it drops a little bit. And as my corals are growing, I'm seeing that consumption, and I can dial those numbers in a little bit more to add my little bit more kalkwasser to keep up with the demand of the corals. This way, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, here's the interesting thing, because we're talking about alkalinity.
Yeah.
Alkalinity could actually be a really good indicator of how well your lighting is working.
Exactly.
So, for example, with in fact, Ryan, you and I had this conversation, and I said, Ryan, when you put the kits on your system, keep an eye on your alk, because your consumption should go up.
Well, exactly. I did what I did, because I had the alkatronic and I was watching it, because I keep everything so finely tuned. The alk is always staying on that line. And when I did put the kits on there, I started seeing more absorption, and it was more demand, so I had to start kicking things into gear. And it was a really good indication, like you were saying, and I did watch it.
Yeah, because what's happening is that energy that we talk about, the light energy, the corals are utilizing that.
Exactly.
So you are getting growth, because obviously alk consumption is because the corals are utilizing it.
Exactly. It's going somewhere, so they're taking it in.
So that's awesome. So since you can graph it, you can probably see the reaction when the lights go off.
That's the thing.
You can see the reaction.
And that's what the alkatronic does. It does all that for you, right? It doses when you need it. It monitors it. And this way, when it does dose, it just doses what you need. It's not like you're pouring in, too much at once or not enough. It just keeps you on that fine line. And that's what keeping everything stable. Stability is the key. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
We took a tour of the Long Island Aquarium where Joe Aiulo runs, and we did all of these tests and experiments that he does. And he was growing coral so fast, Ryan, that in his reactors are broken frags that you would pay $400 for. They're in his calcium reactor. A tear came out like an Indian. That's how fast his unit. He got the 25,000 gallon system. That's how fast they grow in that system. He's using broken coral skeletons like this, like that. And they have multiple metal halides. I think he has like 20 something 400 watt metal halide, 1200 watt metal halides. I think he has up there.
Oh, yeah.
It's astonishing the amount of light that is hitting that tank.
Oh, yeah. Well, Joe knows his stuff when it comes to the corals. And I'll tell you, obviously we've been to the Long Island Aquarium. It's really awesome if anybody ever gets a chance to check it out. They got some nice tanks there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely want to make it down there sometime. I've never been.
Well, up in Canada, do they give you opportunity in the aquariums up there to do the like behind the scenes tour, or to like see some of the systems that they have running those things?
Well, we got Ripley's aquarium in Toronto. I've been there once. Never really pressed to do a tour behind the scenes. I'd like to go back again and see if it was possible. It'd be pretty cool to check out. But never. No, that's the only aquarium that I have around my area that I can go see. Yeah. It's pretty sad. But when I went, I loved it. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah.
When he did the talk at the Brooklyn Aquarium Society, I said it like 3 times that night. After you left, everybody was like this. He measured the intensity, and he measured the PAR and all these different levels in the lights that he brought. He measured the room lights, and he measured the lights that were over a tank with plants. And his wife gave a demonstration, and we did the wave, the color wave that they put on all of the boxes that nobody really understands. They put the and we were like, it really wakes you up to, okay, what do I have in my house? Like, I put all of this into the tank. I really don't know what I'm using at the end of the day. And it was amazing because it's a lot simpler when you don't put all these numbers and complicated different ratios onto a light, and just get the light. This is made for this, and start from there, one thing at a time.
Well, I think, it's kind of, I fought with this my entire career, meaning that, yes, lighting can be very complex, but it doesn't have to be. And what I mean by this, and D, again, I'll go back to the old days, right? When Coral Life or somebody came out with a bulb, right? They knew what the corals needed. See, it's no secret what corals respond to. Like I explained in my talk, we have the sun as a model, right? We have the sun as a model, which is very easy. And we have all sorts of data. I mean, we have data out the ears of what corals respond to. What happens is sometimes is the hype gets involved. Like D, you mentioned how there was power compact lamps. Then there was T5 lamps, and that was the next greatest thing. Then we had this, and that was the next greatest thing. And all the while, but see, the interesting thing is the needs of the corals have not changed. Not in 20 years, not in 50 years. Our understanding of their needs is what has changed and what's improved. And lighting is a big part of that. What a lot of people would be surprised is how much room for error there is regarding the lighting, because guess what? Corals are adaptive organisms. They're going to adapt because they have to if they want to survive.
Exactly.
So D, hey Ryan, you got a tank. D, you got a tank. I know some of the other people have tanks, right?
Yep.
All 3 of you probably have different lighting on your tanks, right?
Yep.
But yet all your tanks are doing great.
Exactly.
You see what I mean?
What lights do you have in your tank there, D? On your
Corals are going to adapt. So as long as those other important parameters are there, corals will adapt. And I see people all the time, hey, will this light do good on my tank, or that light do good on my tank? You'd be amazed at what you could get away with. The key is, when it comes to any equipment for your tank, lighting included, reliability, that's important. You know what I mean? Reliability. How much can you rely on that light to turn on when you want it to turn on, and so on and so forth. And even with less expensive systems, you can always add more light. So listen, whether you're running a Radion, or you're running Kessels, or you're running a Zet light, or you're running a Max Spec, okay? If it's utilized correctly, all of those people can be successful.
True. Like this guy here, he says you kept running a Coral Life Power Compact, my first system. Still have it, new bulbs, it's my stock.
Yeah.
I have it in a box, I think, sitting over here. I swear to God, I have, because I didn't have the heart. When they work, it's not that they didn't work, but maybe they were hot, maybe like he said, changing the bulbs. But you never throw, we are hoarders. Aquarium people are hoarders. I have lights over decades. I have lights over generations. Like I can go back and look at T8s that I had over my other tank.
Right? If we had Beavs on here, you see his collection.
Because you remember the power compacts, and this is, and I explain this to people. This is how ridiculous the hype in the aquarium industry regarding lighting is. So now a compact fluorescent lamp,
Just
right?
a bent bulb.
It's a bent T5 bulb.
It's a bent
It's
bulb.
the
So
same tube.
instead of
No,
one tube, instead of
it's
two
the
tubes,
same
you have one.
tube. It's a T5 bulb folded in half.
Yeah,
Now,
we realize that now.
Remember that 3-foot power compact bulb you could get?
Now you
That
got
was a 96-watt lamp. Ain't no T5 on the market at 3 feet putting out 96 watts. Okay, so in theory, compact fluorescent lamps were not a bad concept at all. They produced a lot of light. The problem was, unfortunately, the early adopters, the fixtures weren't designed properly. They got too hot. And that's where the problem became. The fixtures just weren't designed properly to manage the technology.
Yeah, I gotta check that.
Yeah, go ahead and check. Be my guest.
So one thing was funny. So when I did, I built my own light fixtures, and that didn't work. We were actually doing a hockey arena,
right?
We were retrofitting it. We took down these old LEDs that were outside. They had 3 LEDs built in it. I'll be honest with you, I put them over my reef tank. I screwed them into the canopy, and I ran those until I could actually get a real set of lighting, right?
Oh, yeah.
Man, the core light was even crazy with those Cree lights. Not going to lie, it was pretty awesome, and they were free.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I just never have the heart to get rid of these.
Oh, yeah.
Remember these Coral Sun? I had boxes of these, brand new.
The
T5. Because I had the fixtures. Because remember, we had to keep changing bulbs.
Yeah.
So you never wanted to come home and like, oh man, my whites are not on or the blues are not on. Then you got to order it. You got to wait for it to come. So I had these. I had 8 of these over the tank. I had 4 and 4.
Yeah.
And they had all these crazy specs, and oh yeah, this is made in Germany. It is because it's Germany, it's the best thing since sliced bread. And...
Right.
And when I had my LEDs, I ended up getting the T5 retrofit kits. You got the ends, and then you had to build the brackets, so you get that contraption inside the canopy. And same thing, it was good, but then the ends would start to corrode.
Yep.
It did have the seal on the ends, the screw on tight. But it still get like a moisture in there somehow. Oh
yeah. Well, and the thing is, listen, at the end of the day, lighting and water circulation, whatever that may be,
right?
Lighting and water circulation are the 2 most important investments you'll make in your system. Yes, for example, Ryan, the monitoring is great. Yep. The dosing is great. But technically, you could run your system successfully without it. But you cannot run your system successfully without a good light source and good water circulation. Those are your 2 minimum requirements. And interestingly enough, probably 2 of your most important investments in the system.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
So but yeah, so you mentioned the compact fluorescent lamp. So yeah, it's basically just a T5 bulb folded in half. And that's why I always cracked up when I talked about them.
Well, I know we're running long in the tooth here, but since you just mentioned it, and Ryan knows about it, it came up. It came up a while ago at another talk, another stream, a live stream. A lot of these fixtures out there, are they actually rated safe to be used? Like we have UL ratings and several safety ratings. You were talking about in your plant, all of the safety guidelines and permits, and you get inspections to make sure that these units are safe to run in the environment that they're running in the saltwater, freshwater. Now, with all of these fixtures you buy on eBay and black boxes and all these, and even some of the high-end ones, how do you know that they're safe? Or
Well, put it to you this way: any company like Ecotech, Aqua Illumination, Kessel, even Reef Brite. Okay, any of these companies, we have a lot at stake. Let alone if you guys had any idea the money we spend on product liability insurance and everything else like that. So you make sure that your stuff is up to snuff or up to par. You see what I mean? Unfortunately, when you buy stuff on eBay, it's buyer beware, because guess what? If you're buying something on eBay, you could even be buying what you think is a Zet light, and it's actually a knockoff of the Zet light.
Yep.
That's true.
You don't really know what you're buying. You think you're buying a Jabo, but it could be a Jobby. And no, I'm serious. Yeah, so unfortunately, yeah.
Acme. What is it, the Roadrunner? Acme.
Well, that's why you got to keep everything so secret when you're building new things, because as soon as you bring it to the show, it's like, boom, it's already copied, fabricated in China, and it's already out in the market for a name, and it's got no ratings on it, nothing,
No ratings, nothing on the wires.
Yeah, it's crazy how fast they can design, like just take that design and just whim it out and just make their own,
Well, because again, a lot of these other companies, let's say these outside of the United States, outside of the United States, listen, how are you gonna, there's no recourse.
Yep.
There's no recourse.
Yep.
But when you have companies like even Sitchi, Sitchi makes some awesome pumps.
Yep.
Okay? And I know for a fact they're made in Italy. Okay.
Yep.
But they're here in the U.S. Kessel is here in the U.S. Ecotech is here in the U.S. AI is here in the U.S. Hey, we got to see you guys at the shows. You see what I mean?
Standards, yeah.
Exactly. So we have very strict standards. Unfortunately, a lot of the deals on Amazon or eBay, you really cannot guarantee what you're buying.
We even got Steve Berlin from he's on here tonight.
Hey, Steve.
What's going on, buddy?
Hey, Steve.
What's going on, buddy? But yeah, so any of these companies, Daryl, and now me, myself, I can speak about our lights. Okay, I'll speak about our lights.
Yeah.
Our power supplies and all of those peripherals are UL and CE listed. Okay. I've always designed the primary light source, okay, whether it be an XHO, a Lumilight, or what have you, to be one low voltage. Okay. And literally that's for safety, because you are dealing with water, right? So when you're dealing with low voltages of, let's say, 24 volts or less, okay, there's a lot more room for error.
Yes.
I always get nervous with any device. Where you have to take, let's say, 120 volts from the wall.
Yep.
And have it directly interact with water.
Exactly.
Have it directly interact with water. So again, it's important. Companies, like I said, just know the company you're buying stuff from.
Yep, exactly.
And yeah, I was looking at Reef, the C Forever. He asked, do you make a 12-inch Reef Brite? And yeah, they make the 12-inch, 24, several sizes. Now we know they make a 72.
Yeah, that's
I didn't know that. I was,
Yeah,
well, like
asking like, oh, I got an 8-foot tank and I can't find a light that's 8 feet long. Well, now you know where to go.
Well, it's funny. Some people, Reef Brite, we've been doing this for a long time. So, again, with a lot of these lights, it's not just like we're out there selling something. We've worked with a lot of people. And there was a gentleman there, to be correct, who said, yes, 1 amp can kill you. 1 amp can actually kill you.
That's Anthony.
So the thing is that's why you want to be really careful with some of this aquarium-related stuff and know with what you're messing with, because 1 amp can absolutely kill you. Hey, Eric Tang, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, man. Can't hear D anymore.
Yeah, we lost D's audio.
Yeah, I got you.
Oh, there you are.
I found out I dropped one of those refugium lights, the old refugium lights, into the water, and I felt when that hit the water.
Oh,
I was like saying prayers. Like, thank God it was only like a 30 watt or whatever. But
and the sad thing is that it's natural reaction to try to reach in there and grab that light.
Oh man,
Don't do it.
Ooh. Yo.
Do not do it. You can kill yourself. You can kill yourself. That's why they tell you, make sure to turn everything off before you do anything, because you know, bad things happen quick.
Very true. Very true. The other thing I wanted to talk to you, like, so I had the Year 6 kits over my tank. I only needed 2 power supplies because we chained them all together. Remember?
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome. You got only 2 power supplies to run all those fixtures, and you daisy chain them together, and you have the extra components like the extra link to it as well. Because my tank, you know, how I ran all my wire management across the ceiling, down the wall, all the way to, you know, the life support system room. It was great having that, because you add so much cord, like power to those lighting. It's awesome.
Yeah, that was what I was gonna ask. Like, how long is that cord, or did you have to do your own cord? Or
I didn't have to. My AIs, I'm an electrician. I extended everything myself. I did everything legal. But with his lighting, I didn't have to do any of that. Everything is just plug and play. You know what I mean?
That's all.
2 power supplies, you know, controlling it through my Apex, and everything was just daisy chained them together. It was perfect. Perfect set.
Yeah, we do. To answer your question, D, you know, we do have our own cords, if you will. We make our own cords. And what's interesting, again, it's one of those little details. When you plug them in, they actually snap and lock.
Yeah.
And we do that to help keep the moisture out of there.
Yeah.
Okay, we do that to help keep the moisture out of there. And we purposefully have them with longer cords. So I think the fixture cord is 6 feet. The cord from the power supply is like another 6 feet. And then you have the electrical cord. So you never have any problem plugging into something and getting that cable because we have so many different types of tanks and sizes and configuration.
Because when I was opening up the box, I'm like, holy, look at all the cable on here. I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. I'm like, some of the pumps, you know, like a couple of the pumps, the brand I got there, I couldn't even reach the other end of the tank. So, you know, I had to figure out how I was going to do it.
Yeah, I don't know how some of these companies, when you get like, okay, anything past like a 4-foot tank, you get a 3-foot cord. How are you going to put that in there? You got 2 feet down, and then wherever the outlet is, you got to run. And now you get the worst thing, people running extension cords on some of these things. There's another thing, because a lot of those extensions don't have ground. But they have no grounds.
And even with, let me tell you something, guys. You know, D, it's funny you brought that up. Even with grounds, okay? Guys, I can't stress this enough. Those power strips that are all behind your tank, beware, because it's not a matter of when water will get on them. I mean, or I should say, it's not a matter of if water will get on them. It's a matter of when. And salt water is very, very conductive. And a lot of these cheap multi-power strips and things like that, if they're behind the tank, that's why they want you to have drip loops. And that's why seriously.
We mentioned that today. Look, I feel old now. We mentioned that today. I says, with all this technology, no one mentions a drip loop anymore. That used to come on the box when you bought anything with electricity in the old days. It used to show you a picture of the drip loop. Even if you have a control board, like they have these fancy control boards that you put your Apex and controllers and everything on.
Listen,
if water runs to it, it doesn't matter how much you pay for it.
Listen, I see these guys, and I get it. I get it. They want to make their setups cool, right? I get it. Listen, I'm a guy. I get it, right? We want to make stuff cool. Yeah. What they're basically using is, I've seen people use those DJ power strips.
Yeah, they run right to the water, runs right into it.
Those things, one, are not designed for that.
That's the worst.
And two, moisture and humidity will get in there. Those are not designed to be run around water. They look cool. I know it's convenient to have all those little switches, but especially if you're running it under the tank, meaning if it's in the stand where the doors are closed and you got your sump and you have all this moisture and humidity, that's just a recipe for trouble. If you're going to use something like that, make sure it's external from the tank and away from the tank so that water can't get at it.
Yep. Well, exactly. And it doesn't take much to do a water change over your tank. Some just goes down the glass, drips into your power supplies. Doesn't take much.
No, it doesn't.
Then you're out a few $100, or you never know what's going to happen, or you're dead. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So.
Hey Google, turn cube lights on.
There you go.
D, you just made my Google home.
Did you? I heard both of them go, "Ba-doop."
Oh man,
That's funny.
Says we don't have that.
Well, you're great, man. Tullio, I tell you, you're a wealth of information. I never get enough of his presentations. You always can tell a guy's experience by how he can break it down into the simplest of terms and make you understand it. So I really appreciate you coming on tonight.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I appreciate you and Ryan having me. As always, I knew it was going to be a lot of fun because, you know, anytime we get together, you never know what's going to happen. And I do really appreciate that. I really appreciate you guys having me on.
And he has the best shirts. Oh, man, he has the best shirts.
Oh, yeah.
Amy was going on with Tullio's shirt.
I love it.
I know, it's awesome. It's awesome.
So, Ryan, listen, before we wrap it up, so what's with this big freshwater build you do?
Yeah,
I know, right? Yeah, so I mean, you know, I'm gonna dabble into the freshwater side now. I'm pretty excited. It's like you said, you always want to learn and, you know, keep pushing ourselves and keeping it fresh. So that's what I'm doing as well. So I got a 420-gallon tank that we're gonna be setting up. I'm gonna be doing like a sump, and we're gonna be adding, you know, some new lighting to it as well. So
Now what's the circulation you're doing with that tank?
So the circulation on this one. So I have the.
You're asking the same questions I asked earlier.
Yeah, so yeah,
we're old, baby. We're too old.
I teamed up with CJ Pumps, so we're running all his pumps on there. We're gonna be running the flow pumps as well. So we're gonna be adding a bunch of flows. Try to switch it up a little bit here. Gonna be, you know, try thinking out of the box a little bit.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what. I've used Sitchi stuff for years. I've used Sitchi stuff for years. In fact, I used to have this big MRC dual Beckett skimmer, and I used one of the Sitchis for the recirculating pump. Yep. I'll tell you what, I'll be the first to admit I'm a lazy reefer.
Yeah.
I don't clean stuff.
Yeah.
I don't clean stuff, okay? And this pump, you want to talk about abuse, and that thing just kept ticking, and I never had any problems with any of that stuff. So I'm glad to see you running the Sitchi.
Yeah, I'll get one to show you here. I'm pretty excited. We were talking about, you know, controls, you know, so these new pumps of his actually has that control app function and everything. Let me see. Yeah, grab me that one and the bigger box as well, if you don't mind. I got Dina grabbing these boxes for me, actually.
It's going to be very interesting to watch Ryan apply what he's applied for the reef side of the hobby to the freshwater, to the planted side or the freshwater side of the hobby, and to see what the different needs are.
Right. Yes, exactly. So that's what I'm very curious to learning here, because myself, I've always been about reef tanks. I dabbled a little bit in freshwater, and this is gonna be like a learning journey for myself, and that's why it's so exciting. Like with D, you know, he's already been into the freshwater. You've been into the freshwater side as well, so you know I can pick your brains about all this stuff. You know what I mean? So this is one of the CJ pumps here, the Extreme SDS. This is what I'm gonna be using for the flow of my tank, and it's got the
control,
yeah. So we were talking about controls. If this one here gets away from the Wi-Fi, it'll let you know there's something going on with your tank. If your Wi-Fi drops, you're like, oh, I wonder what's going on. So definitely, it's gonna be pretty cool to use it. So it's definitely full of control on that one. And then I got two of these actually for this is the big guys here. Same thing. Yeah, internal, external for in your sump, because I'm gonna be running a sump on my tank. So this is what I'm gonna be running as well. I'm pretty excited to get these babies all plumbed into the system. I got 2 returns coming into this tank. I might hook one pump onto each return, or I'm going to be running reactors on this tank as well. So I might run one for reactors or just one for flow. But I do have the other CJ pumps as well. I can just run on reactors. So I got a lot of different combos I can do here. So,
well, I'll tell you what. When it comes to freshwater stuff, and I know we're wrapping it up, but what the hell, right? It's Saturday.
Saturday night.
Yeah, just keep rolling, buddy.
When it comes to freshwater stuff, because I set up this cool freshwater tank. And Ryan, you've seen some of the posts, and I had all these cool shrimp and clams and pretty exotic stuff in there.
Yep.
What I found that I think is often overlooked in freshwater systems is you can absolutely benefit by using more flow.
Exactly.
Because like my Madagascar lace, that thing loves flow. My other plants,
Valentinaria,
the plants stayed cleaner, they were healthier.
Yep.
You know, and I understand with the canister style systems and things like that. Like on my freshwater system, I ran one of the big Sitchi whales.
Yep.
The big whales.
The cannon,
and that
those big ones.
flow was not a problem. In fact, I think the whale I was running was rated for like 100.
Oh, that's commercial.
Yeah, 150 or 180 gallon tank, and I'm running it on a 25 gallon tank.
Fisher on the sidewalk.
No, because you know what? By breaking it up, because remember, the plants will break up the flow.
Yep.
And if you plan where your outlets are and everything else like that, the main thing is just having that flow. And I'm absolutely certain that it was the increased flow that had a big effect in terms of the overall health of the plants in the system.
Exactly, and that's what we were talking about tonight. The thing is too, like, hey, if I put driftwood in there, I have, you know, different kinds of rocks, it will, you know, the flow will get blocked, right? And this way, by adding, you know, these power heads in there, will help direct the flow. Because in some
the plants
be enough, you know.
The plants will actually react to the flow, and they will root up different. They will grow different.
They'll probably get a stronger root on them as well, wouldn't they? Because if there is flow, they're going to want to, you know, really bury themselves.
Yep. So.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, bad.
No, it's all good. I just forgot what I was going to say, to be honest with you.
He's getting old.
In freshwater tanks too, the research, there's like detritus as well gets built up in the tanks, right? So adding that extra flow would get that detritus, you know, pushed into the system over the overflow and go through the filtration system.
Right.
Same like a reef tank.
Exactly.
Very similar.
Yeah, like I'm not running any canister filters on this tank. It's all going to be sump. I got some pretty cool designs in my head that I'm going to do. So
only thing with the sump that you may or may not run into is when I tried to run a sump on a bigger freshwater. When my reef was a freshwater tank, I lost CO2 because we used to run trickle filters back in the old days. We had all those bowls that you used to have, and your water used to run over there, and it used to break up, and you used to run CO2 canisters.
Yep.
And a lot of the CO2 you used to lose because we used to break it up with all these trickle. It's things we've just learned so much.
But you know what though, D? Here's the thing, and again, I'll just base it on my own personal experience, okay? I noticed that the more I kicked up the flow, the less I needed to run the CO2. In fact, my system got to the point where, because I had so much flow, because there's a lot more CO2 in atmospheric air than people necessarily with. So if you're constantly having that mixture and that interaction and that flow, if you will, it got to the point where I totally turned off the CO2 and the plants and everything were doing great. But that's because I had a ton of flow.
Well, it's going to be really curious to see how Ryan's 420 goes. I can't wait till that starts.
Yeah,
exactly. I'll tell you one thing. It'll be all set up. If it doesn't turn out, it can always become a reef tank.
Do you really want another reef tank? That'll be 1,000 gallons of water then.
Yeah, I know, right? Jeez.
So then that could be fish only.
The freshwater, listen, I love the planet tank.
Water. I don't pay for my water, so it's a little, you know what I mean?
That should be Dina's tank, freshwater.
Yeah, eh? Yeah. She agrees, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how this all plays out. So I'll have to pick your guys' brains.
Anytime, brother, anytime.
Yeah. Oh. So was there something you want to surprise you wanted to tell us about there, Tullio?
Well, I guess hold on here. I can show you something real quick.
There we go.
Hooray!
Let's see what this is.
A lot of people have been asking about like the Kessel A360s and things like that, you know, utilizing the Reef Brites with them. Well, I'll give you a sneak peek.
Ooh.
A360.
Oh, very cool.
And this one actually, this assembly here, you can either suspend it or it will work with the Kessel arm mount.
Oh, wow.
It will not work with the flex mount, but it will work with the arm mount.
There you go. I got you on the big screen here. Show
Yeah. The holes right here, well, the holes right there that you can see, they line up. Well, I'm trying to do this backwards anyway. Those two holes right there line up with the Kessel mount for the metal tube mount that they have. So there you go. And what's nice about these is you'll be able to use, like, D, you were saying how you wanted some 72-inch XHOs.
Uh-huh.
With the new system, you can have a 72-inch XHO, and you could put as many of these on there as you want. And what's really slick about it is you can slide them.
Oh, shoot. Oh, that is cool.
Set them up. Once
That's
the
very
weight is
cool.
on the system, it automatically locks, but then you can actually slide. And this will work with the AP9s. This will work with the 360Xs. So we'll be releasing this setup really soon.
Well, you got some happy.
That's awesome.
See that?
Oh, yeah. In fact, it was funny. I was joking around thinking to myself, the past few weeks, I spent more time with a micrometer than I did with a spectrometer. You know, all the different hardwares and threads and you name it. But we're really happy with how it came out.
What is that?
So now all you guys got a sneak peek, baby. Sneak peek. You saw it here first.
Nobody's seen that yet, literally. I mean, that's not even like, whatever. That's literally, in fact, those parts, the reason why they're silver is because they're literally fresh off the machine. They didn't even go to powder coat yet.
Yeah.
They didn't even go to powder coat yet.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us. That's awesome.
No problem, man. No problem. And thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, this is awesome, man.
Yeah.
We'll do it again sometime, guys.
Yes, for sure, Tullio. Yeah, there's a lot
when Brooklyn opens up again, steak's coming. We're gonna fatten you up when you come back to New York.
All right. That sounds good, man. That sounds
Joe's
good.
got the Thai place all lined up. He's supposed to be bringing us to this Thai place over here.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Oh,
nice.
All right. Well, we've been, almost 2 hours in here. Time flies when you're having fun, eh? Holy smokes. Plus, I don't know if you want to stay on, Tullio. I just have the contest I've been running in the Farm Boy Reef Club. An algae barn sponsored for us for a $300 starter refugium pack for one of the followers. It was going on in the club for the past couple of weeks. So tonight we're going to pick the winner. I got all the names put into the name picker here. I'm going to share the screen and we're going to hit the button and we're going to see who's going to win this package tonight. So I'm going to share this here.
So now for you guys that are wondering how to get in on these contests, you had to have been following the Farm Boy Reef channel. This was all posted a little bit earlier. So if you're not already followers of our channels, get on there, sub now, because when we do this, we do it big.
Exactly. And we're going to have different prizes going forward too. So always make sure to get in on these contests. I ran this one for like 2 weeks. We got 40 people, or a little bit longer. Yeah, I got 40 people that were legitimately followed all the rules and got in on this contest. So I just want to show you guys. So this is the ultimate refugium pack. Somebody's going to win tonight. It's worth $300. And whoever wins, I just need your address, shipping information, so I can give the algae barn, and they're going to ship it right to your door, this kit. All right. So I'm going to get the wheel up here.
And sorry, baby, the submissions are already closed. They already closed as of earlier today, I think around earlier this afternoon.
I shut the comments off there. We're going to get the wheel up here. I'm just getting everything. Can you guys see the wheel now?
Yeah, the Wheel of Fortune.
Yes, I got
Sajak, now known as Ryan.
That entered. So all I have to do is hit here. So here we go, guys. See who's going to win this.
Round and round it goes. Where it stops, nobody knows.
There we go.
Woo!
Jonas, Mark. There you go. Congratulations, buddy. So, yes. So, Jonas, just can you message myself or D? Just hit us up on Facebook. Send us your all your information. We'll get this shipped right out to you ASP.
Jonas, Papa's got a new pair of shoes.
Yeah,
That's an awesome prize. That's an awesome prize. That's a great pack.
It was very nice Algae Barn to do that, and it's the same kit that I started the Hulk on, started its Refugium. So I can firsthand, it's a great product.
No, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. Well, listen, guys, I want to thank you again. Thank you very much for having me. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you for tuning in, and I'm sure we'll talk to you guys soon.
Yep, sounds good, Tullio. Thanks for coming on the show, buddy. You have yourself a good
night. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Great show.
So there you go, everyone that joined in today. We got to learn a little bit of knowledge from Tullio from Reef Brite. Hopefully you guys really enjoyed this episode. It was a great one, man. You learned so many different things talking to these guys in the industry about lighting, AD.
He's been around a long time. Like I said, he's spoken at our club a couple of times. Yeah. We've seen the innovation from both Reef Brite and several other companies. And it's always great to get somebody that has years under their belt that can actually apply the science to why you're spending the money.
Well, yeah, exactly. And, and he's just a great person all around. When I got my kits, he helped me personally, like, design how it was going to run on my tank. And when I got his controllers, how to integrate them into the Apex, I'm like, man, I might as well just get the guy himself to help me out, right? So we got on the Apex, I plugged it in, did all the ramping up from morning to night, and it was cool. And it's been running the same since he touched it, so I can't complain.
Yeah, and he understands the science behind why things work. So who better to decide a product than a person that has been through from the beginning of, I don't want to say the beginning, but has a lot of years in the hobby than to create what we need. A lot of times I think we're just spending money and we really don't know why or what we're buying. So when things don't work, we're quick to blame the company. But if you don't know why it works or how to make it work correctly, then you can't blame the company.
Exactly. And the best thing of all, he is a hobbyist as well, right? So he sees.
He's been around the block.
Exactly.
Look, when Power Compacts came out, I was asking him these same questions.
Yeah, right? Exactly. All right, well, we're almost 2 hours in here. I think we're going to shut her down for the night. So thank you for all the followers, guys, for all your awesome comments. Really appreciate you guys joining in the Reef Collective every, Saturday night at 9 Eastern Standard Time. So we'll see you guys next weekend, and we'll see who we're going to be having on the show.
And follow on Facebook, D from Brooklyn, Farm Boy Reef Club. Look out for those updates because we'll put polls, we'll put questions, we'll put contests on those sites. So if you want to take part, you got to be a part.
Yeah,
you got to be in it to win it.
You got to be in it to win it. And, we'll have other contests coming. Just make sure you guys enter those contests. Don't leave it like to the last minute. I went on live on all different social medias for you guys to get in there and win that package, So Jonas, he just won that $300 package, and that's awesome. And thanks again, Algae Barn, for sponsoring that contest. It was wicked of you guys.
Thank you, Algae Barn.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. Was there anything? Yeah, and Sean wasn't with us tonight. He had a few things that he had to take care of. He wasn't able to make it, but he should be on the next show. The show must go on.
The show must go on.
All right, guys. So you guys have yourself a great night, and we'll see you guys next Saturday.
Love, peace, and hair grease, as I always say.
Good night, guys.